Hello, my friend, and welcome to the podcast again today. I'm super excited about today because I have a friend joining me, and also she is a menopause doula. You've probably heard of a birthing doula. You might have heard of a death doula. Menopause doula. This was something I had never heard of until I met Siri Erickson, who is with us today. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Siri Erickson has a doctorate in ministry in contemplative leadership. So she has helped hundreds of leaders navigate big challenges with confidence and compassion during her 18 years as an ELCA pastor and college chaplain. After suffering from debilitating brain related perimenopause symptoms in her mid 40s, she spent countless hours learning her way back to health. Now, as a certified menopause doula, clinical EFT practitioner, that's tapping, and business owner, she works with people going through the menopause transition who feel like they are losing their minds, struggling with out of control emotions, and even failing in their careers. She helps them get a brain upgrade, find emotional freedom, and experience joy as they thrive again in life and work. So, welcome, Siri.
Hi, Heather. It's so great to be here with you today.
Thanks. So, tell us, I'd love for you to share your story in your own words to the audience
Yeah,
today, please.
yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so I was working as a college chaplain and, really enjoying the work with college students and all of that good stuff. But of course, it was also in the midst of the COVID pandemic and a lot of things going on. So I had a lot of stress building up. And it got to the point where, my anxiety levels were so high and my energy levels were so low that I could barely even function in my job or in my life. And I had no idea what was going on. And there were some kind of health moments where I ended up in the ER and all these things, and I thought I was dying at one point, and my sister-in-law, who is a PA and lives down the street from me, was like, "Well, it could be perimenopause." And I was like, "Peri what?" I'd never even heard of it. I mean, this was, 4 years ago or so,
Hmm.
and people weren't really talking about it that much. And my conception of menopause was just like hot flashes, women in their 50s don't get their periods anymore. That's about all I knew. And so when I found myself fairly debilitated, like there were weeks where I couldn't leave my house. My anxiety was so high. I didn't have the energy to take care of my kids, which is very scary as a mother.
Hmm.
Um, I became kind of desperate for answers because my doctors, did all the blood tests, did all the due diligence, and didn't find anything that was quote unquote wrong with me from a medical standpoint. But I knew I wasn't okay. I knew something was dramatically different in my brain and in my body. And so that really set me on initially what was a personal quest just to get my life back, to be able to drive my kids to their activities and go to the grocery store and, really basic things like
Right.
that. And so initially, I started researching perimenopause since my sister-in-law had suggested that could be a piece of the puzzle. And that led me down this, very deep rabbit hole of hormone biochemistry and, estrogen, progesterone, what's happening in perimenopause, how that's different from postmenopause, the whole, impact on the brain, which I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
And so once I kind of understood the science of what was happening and how this period in our lives really impacts every major system of our body, including our brains, that gave me the pieces of the puzzle I needed to understand why I felt so bad.
Yeah.
And then that once I kind of understood what was happening, then I launched a quest for tools and resources to actually reduce my symptoms, get my brain back, get my energy back, get my confidence back, get my life back. And so that led me down this whole track of holistic health and healing, tapping, clinical EFT, nutrition, supplements, strength training, stress reduction, breath work. And once I kind of felt like, okay, I've got my feet under me again, I can function in my life, I had this thought of like, oh, I wonder if there's such a thing as menopause doulas. Because that would be really helpful to have a
Yes.
menopause doula, because perimenopause can last 5 to 10 years. It's different for everybody. And there's just so much, information that can be helpful, but most women don't have the time to just quit their jobs, which is what I did. Quit their jobs and spend hours and hours and hours reading, hormone science and stuff like that. And so I Googled it, as we do in this day and age, and I found the Menopause School, which is in the UK, and it's a school that actually trains menopause doulas globally.
Wow.
And I was really impressed by their curriculum, being really science oriented, but also working with holistic practitioners who are already engaging with other modalities that can help alleviate symptoms. And so I got certified as a menopause doula and was the first US-based certified menopause doula from the Menopause School, which was very cool. And now there are others of us, and there's also menopause coaches and menopause life coaches, and it's a growing community of people who are getting trained to be able to walk alongside women who are going through this big life transition. That's kind of how I got going. And then once I had my certifications from tapping and menopause doula, I decided to open my own business so that I could help other people.
That's just amazing. It's such a good story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
You went through a lot, and a lot of people, like you said, don't have the time to climb the mountain, to figure out what's going on.
Exactly. And I'll just give a little shout out to our alma mater, Carlson College, because I was a chemistry major there, but I also took a lot of other classes, but it really was my love of learning in a like true liberal arts sense of just following the best knowledge and information in whatever discipline I could find to help me. That ultimately is what led to my own success at getting my life back and my health back. And so I'm glad that my brain was still working enough that I could still learn and research, even though my anxiety levels were so high that I couldn't leave my house.
Yes, right. So talk a little bit more about what a menopause doula is.
Yes. So doulas in the fullest sense are people who walk alongside somebody who's going through a major life transition. And so in this case, that major life transition is perimenopause and the menopause transition, which can last 5 to 10 years. So it's a little bit longer than the transitions that some other doulas are helping folks with, like birth, 9 months of pregnancy, and then maybe some aftercare after the baby comes, or a death doula. But so walking alongside people, supporting them with good information, with tools, with encouragement, with support, with community. And then in addition to providing that individual support, doulas also support the whole, kind of community around a person. So that can look like doing education, workshops, talks, retreats, or doing events that help, somebody talk to their partner about menopause, and because there's a
Mm.
lot of relationship impacts to the menopause transition as well, right? It's not just a medical issue, it's also a whole
Right.
person relationship, sense of self,
Right.
sense of purpose issues. So it's very holistic in that doulas can help support kind of all of those different dimensions that somebody might be experiencing as their hormones are changing, right? There is this very kind of fundamental biochemical change that's happening.
Right.
And so, that's really important, but that's not the whole story either.
That's amazing. It's funny because I had worked with birth doulas in the hospital, but I didn't even realize how much they knew and, all the things that they do. So it's fascinating. And this is a big body and life transition. Um,
Yes.
and there's just no sugarcoating that part of it. But there's, a lot of positives that come with it, even though it's a
Right.
lot of change and some struggle, right?
Yes, exactly. I know. I think, when you're pregnant and you're preparing to give birth, you're anticipating this thing that's very exciting, right?
Mhm.
Which is like you're going to have a baby and you're going to have this new person joining your family. And so it makes the pain, I think, a little bit easier
Mhm.
to endure because you're like,
Yeah.
I know there's this good thing coming on the other side of it, and it's clear and it's tangible. But I
Yeah.
think for the menopause transition, people don't have a clear vision of what are those benefits? Like, what is the purpose of menopause? What are the
Yeah.
benefits of it? What are the positive things that come on the other side of the transition? And I just don't think, we provide women with that kind of roadmap or that kind of vision to anchor the journey on. So that's
Right.
something I've been kind of testing out, like how to talk more about that side of the
Yeah.
transition. And I was just giving a talk at a college, for an employee wellness group about
Hmm.
that, like the purpose of perimenopause, and like here's the benefits. And I was kind of laying it out. And some of them were like, well, it sure doesn't feel like that
Right.
right now. And I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
minimize how challenging it can be and how much struggle, there can be, how much disorientation and even, suffering or debilitation in some cases.
Right. Like what you went
And
through.
well, like what I went through exactly. But also I think it's important as a doula to give people hope. Like
Yeah.
this isn't just something you have to kind of white knuckle through and then on the other side, hope that things are better. There's actually so many things you can do to alleviate symptoms while you're going through the transition, and those same things are good for your long-term health.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because there's a lot in the conversation too. Like, is this bad enough? Well, I'm not suffering quite enough. I don't want to ask because it's only sort of bothering me.
Right.
That's a
And I
lot of the
think
conversation.
in general, as women, we've kind of been conditioned to put our own needs second or third or fourth
Yeah.
to other people's, and we just are maybe kind of expected to tough it out or suffer through, or our experiences are minimized, like,
Right.
well, it can't really be that bad. You have a good life,
Yeah.
you know, why are you complaining? Or,
Right.
you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
think
for a lot
what
of people too, I think one of the hard things is it shows up on a random Tuesday, right? You aren't
yes.
sure what it is, and it might take quite a while before you're like, wait a second. I think I might know what this is. Or someone tells you, like your sister-in-law.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think most women are like well into perimenopause before they figure out what's going on. And because a lot of the early symptoms can be chalked up to other things like stress or mental health or
Mhm.
something else, they can easily be missed and, mistreated or misdiagnosed or minimized.
Yeah. For a
Yeah.
well person exam, there's no questionnaire that starts at 40, which maybe there could be, right?
Could be, exactly. There
Yeah.
could be, if I could just wave a magic wand, I would love for every woman when she turns 40 to get at least like a 1 hour class on
Yeah.
here's what perimenopause is. These are the possible symptoms. Here's what you could expect. Everyone's different though, and here's where you can go for support and then to have medical providers for every woman in her 40s like checking in on those basic questions. One of the tools that we got at the menopause school was called the Menopause Support System Questionnaire, which,
Mm.
basically just kind of goes through and asks people about all of the most common symptoms and their menstrual health history and what they know about their mother's experience
Oh.
through the menopause transition, if they have that information. And so I think some of the tools are out there now. They just haven't been like standardized and integrated into medical practice yet.
Yeah. So true. Let's talk a little bit about the brain. Why is the brain such an important part of this transition?
Yeah. So we have estrogen receptors all through our brain. And every time estrogen changes dramatically in a woman's life, she gets kind of a brain remodel. And that happens at puberty, it happens during pregnancy, and it happens at perimenopause. So when estrogen starts to change, becomes very erratic initially and then declines, that biochemistry in our brain triggers a remodeling process. And so different regions of our brain are affected in different ways. But in essence, our brain finds it harder through perimenopause to regulate mood, to regulate sleep, to manage stress. And even, cognitive functions can change, like remembering words or, people walk into a room and they're like, I forgot why I came into this room.
Yes.
And so those things that are happening in the brain are real
Right.
structural changes that are happening because of the way that estrogen and progesterone, interact in the brain. And so when those levels change, we get this brain remodeling process, which is very stressful while the remodeling is happening. I like to talk
Mhm.
about the analogy of like, hey, if you've lived through a kitchen remodel in your home, you know how messy it can be, and things don't happen always on a clear timeline, and there are always curveballs, and some days go better than others, and
Right.
so it's kind of like that, except nobody can see it, right? Nobody on the outside
Right.
can see that remodeling process happening. And so that's one reason it can be so disorienting, is because it's not visible to anyone. And it's very disorienting when you're used to your brain working in a certain way and being reliable. And then all of a sudden, in my case, like my anxiety was so high, I couldn't leave the house, right? That was like not my normal
Yeah.
experience in life. So that's, and even a symptom like hot flashes, which everybody knows about and associates with
Mhm.
menopause, like that's also brain related because there's a part in our brain that controls or helps our body regulate temperature. And that part gets impacted by this whole transition as well. And so even some of the more traditional menopause symptoms are brain related, even though that's not traditionally kind of how we've talked about them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think you're really hit it spot on. I mean, we don't think of hot flashes as a brain issue, do we?
Right.
And it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are some of the upsides? I mean, what you talk about this remodel, you talk about an upgrade. What are the upsides?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing we know just from research on happiness levels for women is that women who are postmenopausal, which is, women after they hit menopause day through the rest of their lives, so, women in their 50s and beyond, they report the highest levels of happiness of any age of woman or girl. So we have greater levels of happiness to look forward to. And some of that actually does relate to this brain remodeling that we were talking about, because the part of our brain that cares about what other people think of us changes. And so I hear a lot of women, even as they're going through like the perimenopause part of the transition, they're saying like, I don't give a care what anybody else thinks of
Right.
me anymore. And I'm kind of unfiltered and I'm just saying whatever I want to say. And all my emotions are coming out. And I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm going to just be my authentic self. And so I think there is also a true sense of like liberation that comes during this brain remodel, which is like, you know what? I'm just going to be me. And that's it. People can take it or leave it.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had a number of clients who have really remodeled their relationships, right? They're like,
Yes.
well, maybe my partner and I want to look at how we live our life differently. And I've got kids that have left home, and now when they come home, they want to just, you know, cook in the kitchen and leave it how they think I'm going to clean it up. And how do I, change that relationship? Or when we go to the cabin, we're Midwesterners, Siri and I, so people go up
Yes.
to the cabin. How do we just change those relationships so we can and notice our own agency in those relationships, that it's a dance and the dance can be different. It doesn't mean that we don't love those people, but
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of the journey, and it's an opportunity. I mean, it takes some work,
Mhm.
right, to set new boundaries or change expectations or have those conversations. But the upside is that if you do that part of the work, you might be a lot happier in your relationships
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well as in your own body. And then there's just, the basic things, right? The evolutionary benefit of like, you don't have to worry about getting pregnant anymore, and
Yeah.
having your period once a month, and kind of the dealing with the swing of emotions in their monthly rhythm. There's more of an even state
Mhm.
to the hormones in postmenopause. And then, if there's a lot of interesting writings too about the spiritual benefits of
Mm.
going through that transition, which is just like really finding a new sense of purpose in your life that is deeply connected to your values, your voice, and being able to show up for the causes, the communities, and the people in your life that you care most about, and being able to just derive a real sense of meaning and purpose from those new choices that you can make.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's always my hope that everyone finds that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
That.
So those are some of the opportunities, I think that can come, and with intention and support of
Mhm.
whatever kind you need, like people can get those benefits. They can have greater happiness, greater sense of purpose, more fulfilling relationships. They can feel that newfound confidence and freedom. So that's my hope for
Yeah, me too.
people.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about brain fog. It's a common complaint, right?
Yes.
And it's kind of
Mhm.
also an up and down thing in perimenopause where one day you're fine, the next day it's rough.
Yes, exactly. Well, brain fog, is I think at its root, it's really an issue of brain energy, right?
Mm.
And so Dr. Lisa Mosconi has done some really great
Mhm.
research on, and if people want to check it out, her book, The Menopause Brain, is amazing. But she's done brain imaging for, the same women at premenopause, perimenopause, and then postmenopause. And the perimenopausal brain is the lowest energy brain
Mm.
of all of
Makes sense.
those. Yeah. And so it's that lower energy because there's this kind of background stress that's
Yeah.
happening with the hormone changes and as the brain is remodeling, and that affects brain structure, but also brain energy. And so as estrogen is kind of spiking and crashing in perimenopause, that kind of stress creates a lower energy environment in the brain, which is kind of what I think is kind of the underlying condition that gives rise to brain fog in varying degrees to different people. Now, that's not to say there aren't things you can do to help
Yeah. What are some things?
yourself, right?
Yeah.
So some of the things that really help with brain energy are really kind of optimizing your metabolism, and that looks
Mhm.
like fueling yourself with
Yeah.
more protein, more fiber. This is all your area, right? What you
Yeah.
teach. But really making sure that your brain has consistent, nutrient dense energy all day long. That can help a lot. And then similarly with movement, really like strength training is amazing to help with metabolism. Moving, I really work with my clients to like move more often during
Hmm.
the day. So like don't save up your workout all week and just do a power run on Saturday.
Yeah.
Metabolism is really helped by moving more often and every day. And it doesn't have to be a workout, it doesn't have to be high intensity even, but like multiple short walks during the day or working in some wall sits, yoga or
Mhm.
Pilates, whatever you like to do, but like doing things throughout the day and making sure you're just keeping your body moving, especially after dinner. Move your
Mhm.
body, don't just crash on the couch, right? Because that can really help your metabolism. So, really trying to optimize your metabolism for brain energy through movement and nourishment, I think, are some of the biggest things. And then the other component, of course, is stress management. So,
Right.
that's a lot of what I do with my clients actually is work on reducing distress in their life,
Uh-huh.
because our bodies hold on to distress, and that adds stress to our brains.
Yes.
So, I mean, I've had some clients that pretty much the only thing they've changed is reducing distress and managing their stress differently, and that's made a huge impact on their brain fog.
Mm.
That one thing alone. So, I really think like managing stress and then nourishing and moving, like those are the three most important pieces
Yeah.
for helping yourself with the brain fog.
What I love about that is you're not a victim of it, right? You have things
Right.
you can do. In fact, people will notice once they start nourishing themselves that, well, I got stuck and I just had mac and cheese with my teenagers, and they'll notice I actually could not think
Yeah.
as well. I felt kind of low energy, and then there's kind of that positive reinforcement of actually when I eat well and I get my movement and I've worked on my stress, I actually think a lot better now.
Yes, and I love that positive feedback loop because
Mm.
when people can feel that difference, that gives them the motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
If they fall off their, good habits, to get back to them because they remember how much it helped and how much better they felt.
Yeah.
And so it's not one of those things where like you just have to do it forever and ever and ever before you could see any benefits at all, like
Right.
people start to notice pretty quickly with good nourishment, especially, that can really start to help really fast for
Yeah.
people.
And we have your story about the anxiety, and people have different mental health issues.
Yes.
Do you mind just addressing that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So progesterone is a part of this story as well. So progesterone is a hormone that really helps us manage our emotions,
Mhm.
regulate mood, handle stress. And progesterone is the first hormone that actually declines during perimenopause. And so a lot of women in their 40s are managing a lot of things and have a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And they've kind of been able to keep all the balls going and keep life moving for them and, work colleagues and family members and kids and whatever might be in their mix. But then all of a sudden, progesterone starts to decline and they just don't have that resilience in their bodies anymore to be able to handle that big of a load. And so that can lead to worsening or new mental health situations for people. It can also lead to old traumas reemerging that haven't been addressed or healed, or, maybe for very good reasons. We've kind of kept things tamped down, or our brain has even helped us forget about them for a while so we could move on. But a lot of my clients find that like they're thinking about these old traumas and old wounds.
Mm.
They're coming to the fore, they're demanding attention, and that is also what's contributing to their anxiety or depression, is like these old traumas reemerging. And so it really is a good time, if that's happening for folks, to get therapy, to do clinical EFT tapping, to get massage, to do EMDR, like whatever modalities you like the best,
Mhm.
to really like take seriously those mental health issues or those old traumatic, memories that are resurfacing, and to really like lovingly and compassionately tend to them and get the support you need to be able to kind of heal through those situations. So
And I'd
the
like
other
to
thing.
point out too that
Yes.
there may be hormone therapy that can help with
Yes,
this,
yes. I
and
was just gonna
and
say
there
that.
also
Yes.
there may be mental health medications that
Yes.
are helpful, useful, and needed at this time as well. So it's not, you know, these things are not all
Definitely.
separate, right?
Exactly. Well, and I think some of the like menopause doctors who are out there, like Dr. Mary Claire Haver, she's, I think, doing a good job of talking about, in a clinical setting, if you have somebody who's in perimenopause and they're having anxiety, like, hey, maybe hormone therapy is the first line of
Mhm.
treatment, even before mental health medications. But all tools are on the table, and everybody needs to know what's happening, right? Know where they are in the
Yeah.
timeline, and then advocate for good medical providers and other
Right.
supportive therapies that can help them, because everyone's going to be drawn to different pathways. And so I'm definitely like an all options should be on the table for people person, because people need to be able to have some agency too over how they want to manage through the transition.
Right. Yeah, that's very nice. I like that. So, one of the things that I really enjoyed listening to Siri speak in the past is that in her menopause doula education, she learned about this kind of general menopause, perimenopause math that we don't talk about very often in the United States. And so, Siri, I would love it if you would share that with people.
Yes. Yes. So, I think a lot of people are just confused. Like, how do I even know where I am in this whole process? And so, an easy way to start getting yourself oriented is to take the age you were when you first got your period. And if you don't know exactly, just try to guess, like, oh, I was 12, or I was 14, or I was 8, whatever it is. Take your number and then add 40. to that number because our ovaries are sort of genetically programmed to work for 40 years. And so in the US, the average age that a woman would go through menopause day is 51. So an average example would be somebody gets their period at age 11, you add 40, that's 51. That's, roughly the age they're going to be when they hit menopause day, which is one day after 12 months after they've had their last period. And then from that number, you subtract 10. So 51 minus 10 would be 41. That's roughly when a person might expect to be entering that early stage of perimenopause. Again, everybody's different. It helps if you can know your mom's timeline because yours might be similar. If she was early, you might be early. If she was late, you might be late through the timeline based on averages. But that at least helps you kind of get a sense for where might I be in this whole process.
That's great. And do you have anything to say about people who have menopause caused by surgery or chemotherapy, or how that changes things for people with brain fog and all this brain stuff?
Yeah, I mean, some of those like surgical or medical menopause situations, they can feel more jarring because you're just going from kind of your cycling and all of that to you're done without having that 5 or 10 year kind of transitional window where your body's almost like slowly weaning itself off those hormones. And so it can feel abrupt and there can be a sudden onset of symptoms related to that. And so, it depends on the person, but it's, if somebody is younger and they have a surgical menopause, for example, oftentimes, but again, this has to be worked out with your medical provider given your unique health history. But oftentimes, the recommendation there is to go use hormone therapy to help ease symptoms and to protect your heart and your brain and your muscle mass and your bone health. Because estrogen does have beneficial protective value for many of those parts of our body. And so if you're in a surgical menopause situation, especially younger, hormone therapy can be really helpful. It can be trickier with like a breast cancer situation. If there's an estrogen component to that cancer, then it has to be, much more carefully considered in terms of like hormone treatment options. But even there, if hormone therapy is not an option for somebody, there are so many other kind of alternatives. Even if it just is like, okay, I'm really going to work on having a healthy metabolism through nutrition and movement and stress management. Like, there are some interesting studies even that show strength training can be as effective as hormone therapy for managing hot flashes, as an example. It's not like if you can't take hormones, there's nothing you can do. Right. There are still a lot of other things that people can do if they find themselves in that situation and they're having symptoms that are very unwanted.
Right. Yeah. And just like everyone's journey is different with it, certain things are worse than other things for some people. That also treatments we have our studies and safety profiles, but also you are an individual. And so it should be tailored to you and how you respond. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I just appreciate how you look at this and all the stuff that you talk about the brain, because it's a big part of it, right?
Really is. Yeah. And, I think you and I both we work with a lot of smart women, highly educated women, professional women who are used to having a brain that they can depend on.
Yeah.
Right. And when it doesn't feel like that anymore, like I was working with one of my recent clients and she was like, I have all these big responsibilities and I don't feel like I have all my faculties.
Yeah.
like I just don't feel like I have the same brain I had before, and that's scary, right?
Yeah.
And so even just being able to create spaces where people can name that without like fear of judgment or professional consequences,
Right.
right? Like I think it's important to just kind of normalize the conversation
Yeah.
and um have workplaces and family environments that understand what's happening for people and can provide support and grace
Yeah.
through the transition.
Well, please let people know, how can people find you on the internet? I will make sure that all the links are in the show notes, but it's nice for people just listening to know how
Yeah.
to find you.
Yeah. So really everything is on my website. So if people want to go to Compassionate Way, they can just Google that and it should come up, or it's www.thecompassionway.com.
Okay.
If they want to put Compassionate Way plus Siri Erickson into Google, I should be the first thing that pops up. So
Great.
they can find me on my website, and all of my services and things are available right there.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for sharing your expertise with the audience today. I know this was an interesting topic we really haven't hit.
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me on, Heather, and it's always a delight to talk about menopause with you and to know that we can be in this together in the work of contributing to a better conversation and more support for people as they're moving through.
And thanks to all of you who listened for being here today. You probably have a friend who would like to hear about this. So please share this episode with them. Subscribe. It helps us, get moved in the algorithm so more people can hear these conversations and get the good information that they need. So thanks again.